Chapter 2428, Singled Out. Published by Divine Tao Library. Translator, Salavan and Ashish. Translation checker, Pew Pew Lasergun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dale Ligerkeys. ZU, hearing this, also agreed with a nod. Ancestral founder, I am not afraid of him. He is just an embroidered pillow, he has no great skills to back himself up. Before Bing Yun could say anything, Yang Kai broke out into laughter and stated, Junior Sister Yu, I'm very grateful for your kindness, but since he is an embroidered pillow, then I don't need to be afraid of him at all. Just watch how your senior brother beats him black and blue to the point that his wives would not recognize him. ZU couldn't help but giggle after hearing this. Bing Yun immediately scolded, don't underestimate your enemy. I know a little about your prowess and am certain Feng Shi is not your opponent, but know that when Feng Xuan reached the Third Order Emperor realm, he also congealed an Emperor Authority bead just like me. If that Emperor Authority bead happened to be with Feng Shi, you must force the battle into a quick end, ensuring he doesn't have any chance to use it. Yang Kai couldn't help but furrow his brow after hearing this. He wasn't afraid of Feng Zai's personal prowess and skill, but he had no alternative but to be vigilant of an Emperor Authority bead. Yang Kai had used Emperor Authority beads twice himself, and each time, they displayed incredible might. If an Emperor Authority bead was really taken out by Feng Shi, Yang Kai would really not be his opponent. Considering all this, Yang Kai nodded and replied, I will remember it. But you don't have to worry about it too much. If he really uses the Emperor Authority bead, I will intervene, Bing Yun added. Yang Kai immediately grinned and stated, with Senior Bing Yun's word, I can rest assured. Let's go then. If we let them wait for too long, they will start slandering again, suggested Bing Yun as she led everyone towards the heart of Ice Moon City. The commotion here had already alarmed all of Ice Moon City's cultivators, and while many people might be oblivious to the facts at this moment, everyone knew that the young sect master of Seeking Passion sect, Feng Shi, would be fighting an unknown young cultivator in the city's battle stage. Almost all the cultivators in Ice Moon City rushed toward the arena, and by the time Yang Kai, Bing Yun, and the others from Ice Heart Valley arrived, the stands were already completely jam-packed. The ring was quite impressive. It seemed that the city lord of Ice Moon City had specially set it up for the cultivators to solve their enmities and grievances. This ring was covered by powerful barriers so that the cultivators could freely bring out their entire strength without worrying about causing damage to the arena or the audience. The ring was also fairly wide, with a radius of 1,000 meters in an oval shape. It was surrounded by a circular grandstand with multiple levels so that it was convenient for the people to spectate. At this moment, all the seats on the stands were completely filled. Be that as it may, more and more people were coming from all directions to enjoy the battle. Feng Shi was already standing at the center of the ring with an indifferent sneer hanging on his lips. There was an enigmatic and arrogant look on his face. After seeing Yang Kai's figure, he gestured to Yang Kai, slowly sliding his thumb across his neck, expressing that he wanted to kill Yang Kai. Be careful, Bing Yun's warning rang in Yang Kai's ear again. Yang Kai lightly nodded before his figure flickered and he shot straight towards the ring, landing just 100 meters away from Feng Shi before he shot a light gaze at him. All the spectators around the ring broke into an uproar, pointing their fingers at Yang Kai, curiously staring at him. All of them were wondering who he was, where he was from, and what gave him the guts to stand against Seeking Passion sect young sect master on the ring. Some busybodies then began to spread word of what happened outside the inn just now. When everyone came to know that Yang Kai had robbed 1 billion mid-rank source crystals from the hands of Seeking Passion sect master himself, and even snatched the space rings of the vice sect master and young sect master last night, they immediately became excited. Most of the cultivators living in Ice Moon City favored Ice Heart Valley, so they didn't like the Seeking Passion sect. As such, when they heard that 3 members of Seeking Passion sect had suffered huge losses at Yang Kai's hands, they were quite jovial. Their cheers and discussion crashed into Feng Zai's ears like tidal waves, and an extremely unsightly look appeared on his face. His emotions were inevitably affected. Up in the stands, Feng Xuan, who was calmly watching, happened to have sensed this and coldly snorted, Xie, if you can't thrash this little brat today, you will no longer be the young sect master. But if you did thrash him, I guarantee that you will marry that girl, ZU. Hearing this, Feng Zai's blood immediately started boiling and his face flushed a little as he proudly shouted, Lord Father, rest assured, your son will live up to your expectations. I will use this brat's blood and soul to wash our sect's shame. I will let him know the fate of offending people who shouldn't be offended. Very good. Act with a free hand, there is no need to hold back. Feng Xuan nodded, satisfied. On the ring, a grim and ruthless look appeared on Feng Zai's face as he stated, coldly gazing at Yang Kai, little brat, you heard what my lord father said. If you don't want to suffer, kneel down and kowtow right now. This young master guarantees that I will give you a quick death. Refuse and... Before he could finish speaking, the nearby Yang Kai suddenly disappeared. Feng Shi was shocked and promptly spread out his divine sense to scan his surroundings, but even then he failed to sense Yang Kai's position. It was like Yang Kai had disappeared into thin air without any trace. Feng Shi hadn't even seen how exactly Yang Kai moved just now. Just when he was filled with suspicion, Feng Zai's instincts began screaming in alarm, and without a moment of hesitation, he pushed his source chi wildly and summoned an oval light shield around himself, enveloping him completely like a protective shield. This was an extremely high-grade defensive artifact for sure. Furthermore, it had no dead angle, covering all sides. Just as Feng Shi activated the defensive artifact, Yang Kai appeared right in front of him like a ghost and punched out, a mocking look hanging on his face. Just as he fired the punch, it set off a huge storm and the world itself seemed to shake. Feng Shi immediately turned aghast. With a thunderous boom, the entire arena rocked. Feng Shi felt like a mountain had smashed into him and an overwhelming force struck him right in the chest, sending his blood and chi into turmoil. An unbearable pain filled his body as he was sent flying. The defensive shield also caved in from the might of this punch and even gave off a crisp cracking sound. Feng Zai's face immediately changed when he heard this and hastily looked up to find a meter-long crack on his Dao Source grade high-rank defensive artifact. He immediately turned pale as dread rose from the depths of his heart. This was a Dao Source grade high-rank defensive artifact that, once activated, allowed its user to stand perfectly still and let any cultivator of the same realm attack him for 10 breaths without breaking. But now, this precious artifact began to crack with just one punch. If Yang Kai delivered another punch, wouldn't it be completely destroyed? Feng Xuan up in the stands fiercely stood up, his eyes bulging as his face filled with shock. He was a third-order Emperor Realm Master, so the moment Yang Kai made his move, Feng Xuan realized that there was something wrong. This brat was far from an ordinary Dao Source Realm Master, and his son was completely not his opponent. So fast, so strong, is this boy even human? Hu Yuan too cried out in shock. Feng Shi was sent flying with a single punch. Where did this boy come from? What do you think? He shouldn't really be Sect Master Bing Yun's. Are you courting death? Sir Feng Xuan might say so, but you. All the Emperor's Realm Masters were knowledgeable and experienced, so this one exchange was enough for them to tell that Feng Shi was completely outclassed by Yang Kai. Whether it was in terms of momentum or strength, Yang Kai had already left Feng Shi in the dust. His victory was just a matter of time. Ice Heart Valley's members were also taken aback at this moment. They had been filled with anxiety for Yang Kai earlier and were extremely worried about what might happen to him once he stepped into the ring, but after they saw this display, they knew that their worries were all superfluous. This Yang Kai was far stronger than Ziyu. The only thing they were wondering was whether it was just a momentary outburst or whether he still had strength in reserve. The women quietly turned to look at Bing Yun, but they only saw a light, indifferent look on her face. She didn't seem to be worrying for Yang Kai in the slightest. Only then did they realize their ancestral founder had long anticipated this result. Sun Yun Xiu, when she recalled her proposal of letting Ziyu go up instead of Yang Kai, felt her cheeks turning a bit red and hot. You dare to blabber on during a life and death match? Just watch how this young master smashes your mouth. On the ring, Yang Kai relentlessly chased after Feng Shi, his fists covered in a 5-colored glow. 5 elemental indestructible sword chi kept pouring out of his fists and there was not a sliver of hesitation in his attacks. Unsure if Feng Shi had an emperor authority beat on him, Yang Kai forewent all notion of hiding his strength and decided to quickly end this fight, eliminating Feng Shi as soon as possible. As such, he had no intention of holding back. As Yang Kai kept ruthlessly punching, the 5 elements sword chi on his fists mutually promoted one another, filling his attacks with ferocious and ever-changing might. With Yang Kai's current strength, he didn't even need to take out any artifacts to deal with the cultivators of the same realm. Feng Shi staggered backwards as he watched Yang Kai's punch coming closer and closer, and feeling the terrifying power behind it, he immediately turned aghast. He had already felt Yang Kai's horror firsthand from the first blow which had cracked his defensive artifact. If another punch landed, his artifact would surely be destroyed, and at that time, even if he didn't die, he would be critically wounded. Feng Shi wanted to use his final trump card, but he suddenly found that his vitality and source qi were in chaos and he was unable to mobilize his strength properly. Petrified, he hastily shouted at the top of his lungs, "Lord Father, save me." In just 10 breaths, he had already lost his previous confidence. He was now like a bereaved dog who was begging for help from his owner. Up in the stands, Fang Xuan too had realized the situation had turned dire. The moment Feng Shi yelled, he had already made his move, stretching out his hand to grab Yang Kai. No matter what, he couldn't let his son be killed in front of so many people. Bing Yun saw this and immediately sneered, "Feng Xuan, in these 3,000 years I didn't see you. Your skin has grown much thicker. Aren't you embarrassed to intervene in a battle between juniors?" While speaking, she lithely and casually palmed towards Feng Xuan. "Bing Yun, do you really want to make an enemy out of this king?" Feng Xuan was infuriated, but he was still forced to pull back his hand to defend. Bing Yun was a master of equal strength, so he would be injured if he didn't mount any kind of defense, and if he was injured here, Seeking Passion Sect would be in serious trouble. The two attacks clashed mid-air and annihilated one another, causing a terrifying explosion that set countless spectators in the arena trembling. Some of those with weaker cultivation even directly fainted from the fallout of this peak-level exchange.